You know, St. Martin Sheriff's Office is on patrol and looking out, making sure that people in St. Martin Parish are safe.
And I mean, was there anything different that you did here that was different for how you prepared for Laura? Or were you guys pretty much briefed? Because you guys are briefed too on what to expect, you know, when to get the guys off the road and things like that, right?
Yes, sir. We got a wind speed of 45 miles an hour. Yep. We have all the guys come in, hunker down, and basically after that we put them out. You know, they did a great job during Hurricane Laurie.
Yeah.
And we just replicated that plan to now.
Now, I'm going to have the Weather Channel, Jennings, I'm talking to you specifically, take our Storm Path 2 camera. This is Bayou Teche, by the way. It's literally, I don't know, 300 yards down the road from me here, and I want you to see how high this is. Are we going to see more of this in and around Breaux Bridge and St. Martin County? More, you know, of these bayous? Is there anywhere that you're concerned that may go underwater or have water flowing across it?
We're concerned about Lower St. Martin, which is, you know, the elevation is low, so we're concerned about that. Most of the area around here is pretty high up, you know, and we're looking at the areas that are low and ensuring that we have patrol there to watch to make sure that the people are safe in those areas.
Sheriff, have you had enough of hurricane season 2020?
Absolutely. I think this year's tested me, put me through a big test, and our sheriff's office has passed with A's.
There you go. Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate you talking to me. I'd shake your hand, but you know, in this day and age, we got to just say goodbye at this point. Again, guys, you know, certainly looking at an area that's gone through this before, and if there's any silver lining here, it's kind of just rewind the tape and put it into play once again. But rain and wind coming ashore this thing right now. We've had some heavy rain. We've seen that bayou fill up as we showed you from our storm pack picture. You can see the radar just covering this area. 57,000 customers without power right now in Texas and Louisiana. We do anticipate those numbers going up, and with this heavy rain and wind that's coming ashore now, certainly trees and power lines are threatened to come on down. All right, let's go down to Jennings, which is off to my southwest. It's kind of interesting, Steph. We're watching this northern eye wall kind of get stretched and come ashore and move on off to the north and east with the high shear that's going on now. But interesting enough, you may still get the center, the low-level center near you.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. Low-level center, and even though that eye wall is getting stretched out, remind you, we're not in the eye wall. It's going to be here in the next, let's say, 3-ish hours. That center circulation, the eye, is about 30 miles to our south. And I want to just give you a lay of the land. And we're going to walk around and show you things that we will be keeping an eye out for. Obviously, the power lines. You see right in this intersection, they are connected here, and they're bouncing a little bit in the wind, but that's something that we will keep our eye out for. And, I mean, things like this sign over here, that thing doesn't stand a chance. It's already flapping in the wind. It's been ripped off. It was standing upright earlier this morning. Driving here, there's been some ponding on the roads. We're not worried about significant flooding, but of course, where you have that ponding on the road. Now, a lot of the businesses are boarded up, and if you haven't ever boarded up for a hurricane, they put these numbers on the boards so that you know where they go year after year after year. It just makes the whole process a lot easier, a lot more simple. This is what the weather is like now. I think you should stay with us. You see those gusts that come in? Those are going to get higher. Those are going to get more consistent. Now, there's some businesses that did not board up, and they just have glass. And so the reason we are concerned about businesses like this, I want to show you this little piece of metal. I have no idea where this came from, but we heard it clinking down the street, and I said to my crew, I need to go pick that up, because all you need is one little small piece of metal like this to just tap on a glass window like that, and it's shattered. You have to deal with the insurance. You have to go through that whole process. So I'm going to take this. There's actually a garbage can where I can throw this away to hopefully help one of these businesses. They are ready, though, for the water, and it's not even necessarily just flooding either. There's sandbags in place, because I'm telling you, water can sneak into any nook and cranny, and this business right here has the sandbags lined up at the bottom of their door to stop any of that water getting in, and they actually even duct taped this door as well to try to stop any moisture from getting in. So this is what it looks like on Main Street. It's desolate. We really don't see many people out here, which is the good news. Now, you have to remember that we've had 3 landfalls here in Louisiana. Cristobal's a tropical storm Marco, and Laura as well. This 4th landfall that we will be getting with Delta, which, by the way, we have never had a hurricane with a Greek name make landfall in the lower 48. So we're going to tie the record for landfalls in one season for the state of Louisiana The record is 4 back in 2004, where they had Tropical Storm Bertha, Tropical Storm Hannah, Isidore, and then Category 1 Lily. So not only are we going to tie that record, but we're going to break another record. We're going to break the record of number of landfalls that we had in the United States for hurricane season. The old record's 9 from 1916. We're going to get 10 with this hurricane. And this is when everyone needs to start watching and paying very close attention and staying indoors, because the eye wall is headed towards us. Again, it'll be the next 3 hours. And even, I will tell you, we've been out here for about an hour, and the weather has deteriorated, and it's going to continue to do that. And the winds are going to be able to pick up here, and we could see them 50, 60 plus 70, even perhaps 80 miles an hour with that eye wall. That's where we have the worst weather. Then we'll get the calm. The good news is this thing is front end loaded. So we're all going through it now. This is when we're seeing the worst of the weather. On the back side of the system, Jim, you know, the eye's opening up and it's pretty dry as well. So at least as we go into the evening hours for coastal Louisiana, I want to emphasize that coastal Louisiana, things will start improving into the overnight hours. But unfortunately, that rain is going to continue inland because it's all northern loaded with this.
Right, and that's a sign of the shear, right? By the way, Stephanie, this morning when we were doing our show, I think, had the line of the year for the hurricane season when you said if you look at all the records of the 2020 hurricane season, they list like a CVS receipt. I will never forget that. That was absolutely spot on, perfect. It's a mile long, and you know, some of the things you just mentioned are part of that. So, you know, Stephenson Jennings, I'm up here off to the east, if you will, in Breaux Bridge, just an adorable little town with wonderful people. Like Steph, I don't have a ton of windows boarded up here, okay? But we do have some sandbags so that we don't get water intrusion at the lower levels. And that's really, you know, the kind of thing we're looking at. Some of the other things we may watch, you know, there's some planters kind of hanging up in the rear with some silks in them. Those may get blown off. Certainly from what we see, there's a glass building just down to the south toward the police station. So that's, you know, that's another area obviously threatened by any kind of debris flying around and things like that. So we'll watch, you know, as this thing continues to decouple and these heavy rain bands move in. But guys, again, as you heard from the sheriff, watch out with these bayous because they're going to fill up, and they're in some cases going to go over roads, especially in southern Martin Parish, which is where they're more susceptible to that. Again, right now it's all about the surge. Mike Bettis, I'm going to throw it back to you and Alex in the studio, but Vermilion Bay getting up there over almost to 6 feet here, 5.7 as we speak. So that's the big issue right now. Yeah. And I was saying earlier, a lot of the factors, even with a weakening storm, which we knew would happen, are already anticipated in the forecast outcome. So you're seeing all these things come to fruition. 57,000 without power, Mike, and counting.
Yeah, and that number's going to go up, and we think the surge is starting to maximize at this point. It may be there and then high for the next several hours until the storm actually comes completely onshore here, and we see the winds back off a little bit, and then a little bit of rotation of the wind, too. Jim, great stuff there. Good illustration what's going on. Winds right now 105 miles per hour as a Category 2 hurricane. It's moving north-northeast now, so it's made that easterly turn going 14 miles an hour. You can see, as Stephanie was alluding to, everything's front-loaded, so everything is on the northern side at this point. The really strong stuff is right in here from the coastline up to, say, I-10, and there's a really strong band that's just come now onshore. There's a look at the forecast, and we think this is going to dissipate relatively quickly. Reason being interaction with land, but also some really strong now westerly wind shear is taking over on this, and so the center circulation might become actually relatively exposed here and then pushing its way off into the Tennessee Valley here over the next, say, 36 hours or so. There's a look at it on the infrared satellite. The cluster of thunderstorms is right onshore at this point, but we're getting a decent push of drier air and westerly shear from the western side, and that's going to start to really decrease the intensity of this hurricane. We still have some really heavy rain that's falling for us right now. That's why we have flash flood warnings in effect here. It does include that I-10 corridor between Lake Charles and over toward, say, Jennings, and then into Lafayette as well. Lake Charles, our winds are gusting to nearly 50 miles an hour. Port Arthur gusts out of the north here at 63 miles an hour, so it could be a little bit of a convergence happening on that western side of the hurricane, and so that's why we might maximize winds there a little bit more. Calcasieu, Cameron, Jefferson Davis parishes all under flash flood warnings right now. I think we'll be there for hours. Beaumont, Port Arthur, this is an area that floods very easily. Jefferson and Orange counties in Texas under flash flood warnings right now. The accumulation is really now starting to pick up pretty quickly here. A lot of places are seeing 5 inches of rain already. I think we're going to get several more inches on top of that, especially with the second heavy slug of rain that comes in for us here. So just be aware of what's coming in here. There's a look at the radar estimates over the last 24 hours, and some of these totals now really impressive. Just outside of Baton Rouge, about 8 inches of rain has fallen for us there. Let's take you to Lake Charles, Louisiana with our Tevin. Tevin Wooten. Tevin, we're going to be in this for a while here, and it looks like winds could gust somewhere at Lake Charles, somewhere maybe in that 50 to 70 mile an hour range.
Yeah, Mike, we've already seen winds gust near 60 miles an hour here in Lake Charles, Louisiana, but what we're really feeling right now, the relentless power of the rain coming along with Hurricane Delta. I mean, just take a look at this. The rain is not only pouring in, but it's being carried and sort of tilted, if you will, almost horizontal at times because the winds are so strong. How much rainfall have we seen today? Well, close to an inch or so, but here's the problem. Half an inch of that was in 1 hour's time. So we do have flash flooding ongoing right now and flash flood warnings. I want to take you to the Calcasieu River because this river, you can actually see not only the whitecaps here, but you can actually sort of see how some of the rain is being carried on the top surface of the water. You can also sort of tell how visibility is reduced too. You typically, on a blue sky day, be able to see an industrial plant that's just beyond me by about a mile to a mile and a half, but visibility is down to about 3/4 of a mile. And the insult to injury to every single person here in Lake Charles, Louisiana is this is the second time they are going through a hurricane in 6 weeks. First it was Laura in late August. Its Category 4 winds came through and raged through and took a lot of things with it, brought down a lot of trees, brought down a lot of power lines, and then today we have Delta coming through. So as Delta comes through, now all those properties that sustain some sort of damage, now the blue tarps that we've been showing you all day long, a lot of those are starting to lift up. Any sort of debris that was not secured, it's starting to work its way and perhaps maybe in a neighbor's yard or maybe even damaging something that wasn't originally damaged before. Power had just got restored here in Lake Charles. The power crews did a tremendous job of restructuring the power grid here, not only in Lake Charles, but also down in Cameron. And now Delta's coming through and bringing a lot of that down. So far, some of the highest parishes with power outages, Beauregard, Allen, and right here in Calcasieu Parish. Let's go over eastbound to Jennings, and that is where, or excuse me, Breaux Bridge. That's where we find Jim Cantori. And Jim, I don't know where you're sitting right now. I can't see your shot because I'm so far away from the camera. Are you seeing any heavy rainfall? Right. And when, if you're not, when do you anticipate that heavy rainfall?
Yeah, well, you know, again, this thing's north side loaded, so we're on the north side of it. We're going to deal with this probably for the next few hours, and then we get on the south side of it, as does everybody, including you, Tevin. You'll get that decrease in the rain before we will, and then we'll, you know, see it follow as the storm center moves to the north. But, you know, Tevin's story is really worth noting here when you think about what's happened in Lake Charles. Because of COVID, you trace it to that's kind of where we start. Because of COVID, they're not making as many roof shingles, so there's a shortage on that. Timber's gone up 30-40%. So some people are waiting for a roof, potentially starting indoor projects under those tarps. So now here comes another hurricane that has going to easily threaten, even with 30-mile-per-hour winds, to blow that tarp off or get water intrusion again over projects that potentially could get started underneath all that. So just an awful situation made even more awful. All right, I wanted to just turn around here for a second. I wanted to kind of point in and show you the tops of these trees because they're away from the buildings a little bit, just to show you. I mean, you know, just really breezy conditions. We haven't had any kind of tropical storm force gusts yet, but it's interesting because with the heavier rain, that's where we typically see, you know, some of the stronger gusts, and we know those will get stronger as the circulation center comes north. So don't be fooled. Even though you may see the heaviest rain and the rain band on radar kind of move away, remember, you've still got a 965 millibar low where there's a heck of a pressure gradient. So that tight gradient near that center still has to come up by us. So winds, interestingly enough, could actually be stronger in less rain. So something to watch. Don't let your guard down when the rain stops. Don't think that's a free pass to get outside. As a matter of fact, one of those heavy rain bands that Tevin was talking about and asking about coming through right now. So that's what we're going to be dealing with. No flooded streets from what we see, but like what we showed you across the street here, you can see this building here, which I understand is up for, you know, renovation. They're going to redo this beautiful building. Just some sandbags and some tape. We tell you that tape is kind of worthless for windows, which it is, but not a lot of folks have boarded up here. They didn't do it during Laura, and they didn't do it, you know, certainly during what we're dealing with Delta. So guys, again, not too far here from our 10th landfall of the 2020 season. Historic, record-setting, and like Steph said, the list of records as long as a CBS receipt. Incredible. Our coverage continues in a moment.
You are watching the Weather Channel's ongoing coverage of the landfall of Hurricane Delta. I'm meteorologist Mike Bettis. Let's get you right to the action. The landfall in Louisiana. Meteorologist Tevin Wooten for us tonight in Lake Charles, Louisiana, where the winds are very gusty right now and only going to get worse, Tevin.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Some of the strongest gusts today that we've seen near 60 miles an hour. Here's the thing. Periodically, we do see a gust, I think, near 65 or 70. So overall, depending on what the observation site sees, that's what will go down in the record books. But, I mean, just take a look at this rain. It is absolutely pounding an area that does not need any more rain, that does not need any more wind, and unfortunately, they're getting exactly what they do not need here in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Let me show you something real quick. When we pull up this video, I think there's a power line that's dangling, or a power pole perhaps that's dangling on the right-hand side of your screen here. And here's why we always say stay indoors during an event as such, because, wow, that thing is leaning. Is that the whole power pole? It's about to come down. Man. And this has to hurt. I mean, for the folks that have lived without power for close to a month here in Lake Charles, they just got power, and now they're losing it again because Delta's coming through with extremely gusty winds, perhaps gusts near hurricane force at this time, and bringing down the power lines, also picking up those blue tarps that we've been talking about all day long, picking up those tarps and exposing portions of their house, maybe also windows damaged as well, and they're getting that water damage yet again. I mean, we were driving through some of the neighborhoods, and folks actually had new roofs constructed already, if you believe it or not. But now, again, if there's any sort of loose limbs out there, if there are any trees that didn't get brought down the first time, with Laura 6 weeks ago, Delta's coming through like a bulldozer and finishing off what Laura started here in southwestern Louisiana and in the Calcasieu Parish. I'll take you out to the water. This is the Calcasieu River. You can actually sort of make out the other little barrier island that's on the other side. All of this water, though, at times starts to white cap over. And then, of course, with the heavy winds that are coming through, the strong and gusty winds that are coming through, it's picking up some of the rain and some of the water as well, right off the top, and kind of just gliding it on, almost like skating on top of the water here. And industrial plants over the way, across the way, you can't see it because the rain is too heavy. Visibility is down to about 3/4 of a mile here in Lake Charles. And the unfortunate part, I am looking at one area of dry air, but as that eye wall starts to approach from the south towards the north, I don't think we're done with this until perhaps 7 or 8, maybe 9 o'clock tonight, in seeing some degradation in the intensity of the rainfall. But overall, we're going to be in heavy rain through at least midnight tonight. Let's go to Mike Seidel. He's in Scott, Louisiana. Mike, tell us what are you seeing, what are you hearing?
Yeah, we're getting the same thing here, not as heavy though, based on your description of the visibility. Very heavy rain. This is the strongest squall we've taken. Winds gusting now 30 to 35 miles an hour. And this is one of the byproducts of all the rain we've seen, over 2 inches so far in the past 3 hours. A lot of standing water in the parking lots. And you can imagine how bad it is out on I-10 here. Right now we're looking westbound. We're about an hour's drive on a good day from where Tevin is over in Lake Charles. So a lot of standing water. The winds occasionally gusting 30, 35 miles an hour, but that's been the worst of it so far. So power outages, at least here in Lafayette Parish, no reports so far. You can see the wind. We do have some semis out on the roadway, but by and large, there's not a whole lot of traffic on the interstate. That's a good thing, because right now we have flash flood warnings that extend from Lafayette all the way over to Beaumont, Port Arthur. By the way, Beaumont has gusted to 64 miles an hour. They had sustained winds of 39. That's tropical storm force. But back to the interstate, I-10 from Beaumont to Lafayette, that's about 135 miles. That entire stretch is under a flash flood warning, in some spots till at least 7 o'clock. And as we've been telling you, this is very front side loaded. So once the center goes north of your latitude, the rain is going to cut off pretty quickly, and there's not going to be a whole lot of rain on the backside. But with that said, we're going to have totals in excess of 5 to 6 inches, and that's why we have these flash flood watches in this area of Louisiana until tomorrow morning. Now, let's head about 15 miles literally due east of us, right on I-10 to Breaux Bridge. Meteorologist Jim Cantori over there. Jim, the rain hits here, and then it moves right over to your backyard.
Yeah, and you know, we're getting the rain like you are as well, Mike. So you know, miserable travel on I-10 as we are off I-10 as well. You know, just to our north of where we are right now in the downtown area. So I want to point out a couple of cameras here. Again, we're looking at pretty much weather that's coming straight down. So the big issue as this thing comes ashore right now is the storm surge. And if you're in Vermilion Bay, it's about 6 feet above normal dry ground. Okay, so that has obviously caused some of this water to come in to the Abbeville area, and that's obviously a problem whenever water gets in. A friend of mine just told me he talked to a friend of his down in Abbeville, and he said there's 6-foot waves right now rolling across Vermilion Bay. Normally docile Vermilion Bay. Okay, that's the kind of stuff we're looking at. Again, guys, we've gusted 20, 30 miles per hour at the most here in Breaux Bridge. Higher gusts off to my southwest, but I want to look at the radar here. This is it. This is the eye wall, the northern side of this coming ashore. Very heavily north side loaded with heavy rain, almost 60,000 without power. That continues to be an issue, and it will be as we go through tonight and the storm moves north. We'll be right back.
The Lab, brought to you.
Get your daily dose of everything weather.
Wow! Boy, do we have a lot to talk about.
Weather Today from the Weather Channel. New episodes every day, only on Quibi.
We are live in Jennings, Louisiana. Right now, we still have power. I know between Louisiana and Texas, there are about 90,000 people without power. We're waiting that eye wall. As the eye is coming ashore, we're just waiting for the National Hurricane Center to make that call that this storm has made landfall. We will get that northern eye wall and then eventually the eye, and that eye wall is what we're waiting for. At 10,000 feet, there are reports of 85, 95 mile per hour wind gusts. Some of that will get pulled down to the surface, and that's what we will look for. Unfortunately here, where the anemometer reading is taking place, it says calm winds. So obviously our anemometer is out. I have my personal anemometer that I will try to take wind readings for everybody once that eye wall comes through. Now this is Main Street. You see some of the metal awnings you have to watch out for if it's already been ripped apart and then it's already loose. You can then get some issues, obviously, when you have those gustier winds that come on in. It's pretty desolate down here, which is the good news. The trees, they've been blowing around. There's some planters actually that have already been knocked over, Matt, around the corner here. You know, the winds haven't been too gusty, but sometimes it doesn't take a lot when you have something that is top heavy. And so that's what you also have to look for, is anything that is top heavy, like trees on already saturated grounds, that can all tip on over as well. We are under a flash flood warning with all the rain that's been coming in. Majority of it is on the north side of this system, and we haven't seen any significant flooding, but when we were driving out here, you know, you get this puddling that happens, and when you drive through, you have to definitely slow down. This area also affected by Laura. So there are some homes here that have tarps on their roofs. And so we will try to drive by those homes a little bit later and make sure that those tarps stayed intact. But for us here, it's awaiting those strongest winds in the eye wall and the heavy rain that has come on down. And I don't know if you could hear that. All right, I want to take you to Lake Charles, where we have some power lines that are down there already. Now, Lake Charles, of course, was hit by Hurricane Laura just over a month and a half ago. And there's significant damage. You have that debris. You have the tarps on the roofs. It's not going to take a lot of wind to move that stuff around. And we're already seeing some of those power lines down. And, Alex, the thing is they were still trying to get power on for everyone in that parish. And now, unfortunately, they're going to have to start over in some areas.
Yeah, it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or perhaps even worse. Stephanie, thank you. We're going to get back to Steph. Right now, I want to get you caught up on what we know. Of course, seeing the scenes there from Lake Charles, already some of those tarps peeled back and power lines down. And they're not alone. More than 63,000 customers are now without power in Louisiana, as well as the state of Texas. Utility company Entergy says it's ready to mobilize nearly 10,000 workers in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas for power restoration. About 8.4 million people live in the National Hurricane Center's forecast cone for Hurricane Delta. We've seen things really ramp up at Tevin Wooten's location. He is in Lake Charles. Tevin, this is an area you spent time in during Laura. Of course, this is a community that would have done probably anything to keep this storm away. And now, again, probably taking a step back in that progress that they've made since that storm.
You know, Alex, I hope when this is all said and done, we can come out of this thing tomorrow with blue sky, sunshine, and everybody's got power. Unfortunately, from the sights and the scenes that we've already seen, I don't think that's going to be the case. I mean, power poles are already snapping, and you have to know a lot of the infrastructure has not been repaired. it's been temporarily fixed, so sort of just in a fragile state at this point. So anything like those power poles that we have seen, or power lines, they're starting to come down, and understandably so. You hear the saying, never kick a person when they're down. 130 to 40 mile-an-hour winds 6 weeks ago with Laura, and now we're going through Delta here. 60 mile-an-hour wind gusts so far. We're not done with those just yet. I think we've got a good 70 to 80 mile-an-hour gust still to squeeze out of this thing. Plus the rainfall, and keep in mind it's the duration. Even if we don't get those 70 to 80 or 60 to 70 panning out, if we get 50 to 60 panning out, it's the duration of time that this thing will stick around, because we're on the west side of the storm. We're not on the northern side, even though the storm is north loaded. We're on the west side, or on the east, on the left side. So as the storm pulls towards the north, we're still being racked with this east-northeast flow that's coming in and delivering a dangerous blow here to Lake Charles, Louisiana. I want to show this guy really quickly. We've got a quick break so I can turn around and I can actually see right now as the rain has lessened. And as that happens, look at the water and the way that it's sloshing around right now. It looks sort of perhaps like a miniature Gulf of Mexico. That's a river that eventually connects to the port of Lake Charles, which is certainly churning up right now because of the force of the wind. In terms of some of the surge that we're seeing near Grand Chenier and also Cameron, perhaps 3.5 or 3.6 feet to 4.5 feet in some spots, and that's only going to pile up as we go throughout the evening hours and overnight tonight. Let's give you a live look at Creole, Louisiana, where, yes, we've still got a long way to go before Delta is done. Look at that. The visibility is down. The heavy rain is there. We've got team coverage on this storm today and tomorrow for you, your family, and your friends to keep you safe from Delta.
Hey guys, our continuing coverage of Delta as the northern eye wall coming ashore now. Decoupling or not, it's still got a lot of rain with it. We've had some gusts that have been over hurricane force. When those get official, guess what? We're going to tell you where they were. But this little place called Lake Arthur has had gusts of 71 miles per hour. You're looking at a live camera right now out of Creole. All right, this is down here in Cameron Parish, and you can certainly see, at times the wind and the waves whipping through. This is kind of classic eye wall. All right, this is kind of classic eye wall here. Winds are out of the east. We've had water rise down there as well in Cameron Parish, Vermilion Parish as well. Vermilion Bay right now up close to 6 feet. There's huge waves rolling in toward the coast, if you will, or toward Abbeville that are about 6 feet high as well. So that's certainly a situation there where water may get into the town. We've seen that camera where there's water in the streets here. I don't know exactly where this is at Abbeville, but it's probably close to the bay. That would make the most sense. But look at this. It's gotten high. Since we started showing you this an hour ago, it's gotten higher. And look at the wave action on top of that. So this is the storm surge. This is exactly what, the modelers go and they look at the strength of the storm. They think about the time of the tide, and they say, okay, what's the worst possible case scenario with water rise? 7 to 11 feet. That's right where that is, and that's, certainly we're in the middle of that right now, and that's why we ask you to get out of storm surge. It's the #1 killer, that and freshwater flooding over the inland areas. All right, guys, back here in Breaux Bridge, I want you to look behind me here down the street, just down the street. This is Main Street. And we just literally, as I was voicing over that video, we had a squall that came through here, and you could really see a lot of these trees and even the sign a little bit. Still, the antique sign there, still swaying quite a bit, all right, in this area. So we're getting a little bit more of the wind, and that's what's going to happen. A lot of us here inland are going to see more and more of this ramp up as this center comes north and northeast toward us. So far, everybody, as far as I can see, has power at this point, but there are about 60,000 customers, and that was about, 30 minutes ago. If you guys want to give me a new number on that, I'd be happy to tell everybody. But we've had, between Texas and Louisiana, thank you, Nora, 80,000 customers now without power. We do know those numbers are going to go up with these bans as they continue to come on through. So heavy rain and it continues to be an issue. We've already had gusts to 60, maybe even higher. That's just one. Remember, one station. You can have higher gusts in and around Lake Charles. So, Tevin, what are you seeing down there? Any visible signs of new damage?
Jim, I don't see any signs of new damage, but here's the problem. Even in the aftermath of Delta here, how will you know, unless you've documented, how will you know what new damage is versus some of the older damage? That's the question that a lot of the homeowners and residents here will face in the days and hours to come after Delta has long gone because of Laura that was here just 6 weeks ago. But today's topic, it is Delta. We've already seen 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts here in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and Calcasieu Parish. In terms of some of the strongest gusts, I think we've got more to go and more to squeeze out because this storm, the core of it is still far away by about 15 to perhaps 25 miles or so in terms of the outer eye wall. Now, the center is about 30 to 40 miles away. I don't think we'll get the landfall. We don't need it. And quite honestly, we don't want it here. You can go around and ask any single person here, do you want the eye wall? And they'd say no, because that's traditionally the strongest part of the storm. But this is a different storm. It's got a lot of dry air on the southern side here and the shear on the western side, so that's ultimately sort of changed the DNA, and this is not a textbook storm. So now what we're seeing here is some of the stronger parts of Delta on the left side or on the west side of the storm. We've actually got a shower or a little cluster of storms on the way, or a little cluster of rainfall on the way that's going to bring in, I think, wind gusts near 75 miles an hour. This is near Iowa and Welsh at this moment. It's working its way, it's racing its way along I-10 here and perhaps portions of Highway 90. Within the next 2 to 3 minutes, check back with us and see what its conditions are like here. So I believe we want to go to Steph now. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm going to take it from you, Tevin, here in Jennings, Louisiana, and things are starting to get worse. Definitely the winds are getting a little bit stronger. We're feeling some more of those gusts here into Jennings. That eye wall is about an hour away from us right now, and if you've been watching us, you can tell the winds are getting a little bit stronger for us here. I'm taking pressure readings and measurement readings. Of course, that pressure will be the lowest when that eye crosses over us, and we believe it will. And so we just want to show you what it looks like in Jennings. So this is their main street, and we saw a building, you see it down the way here, and they're fixing the roof. We can't say for sure if that was one of the roofs that was damaged by Laura, but there is roof damage here, and people do have blue tarps. I asked the officer who was with us, and he said, well, I don't remember that before Laura. So it is a possibility, but we can't say for sure. Of course, the gutters are working overtime. There's a gutter on this building. The water will be pouring out of those. That is something that always you hope your gutters are cleared out so you don't run into any issues with that. And then power. We still have power here in Jennings, but you know, the power lines are going to start shaking when we have those wind gusts coming in. And of course, in this neighborhood, you see they have a lot of trees here. And I will say, driving around, you know what, Matt? I don't know if the camera picks it up. Do you see those debris piles down the street? Yeah. We saw a lot of debris piles like that around, people doing cleanup from Laura. And I know we only have 30 seconds left, but if we can look up at the sky, you know, the rain's going to probably mess up the camera a bit. You can see the clouds moving. We have an east wind here. That means the winds are coming from the east and moving west. That is because we're on the north side of the storm, and that eye wall is coming into us. So the winds are going to continue to pick up. They will be out of the east, and then they will shift around once the storm goes past us. We'll be back with more live reports all night long as Delta is coming ashore. And the eye wall with the worst winds is about an hour away, so we want to walk around as much as we can, give you a lay of the land, show you what it looks like here in Jennings, Louisiana. And we can't confirm if winds knock these over or not, but what I can say is anything that is top heavy obviously will have a better chance of falling over when you have those gustier winds. So that's something that, you know, you need to keep in mind. And now I know the time to clean up is over, and now's the time just to say hunker down. And as we go down the street, I noticed, you know, this area actually was affected by Hurricane Laura. And you see these are homes right here. We're in a neighborhood, and there is a blue tarp on a home. It's right in between the trees. It's a bit of a walk down there. We were trying to walk down there, but I think you're able to see it just through the trees. There are some blue tarps, and we've also seen piles of debris around from what I'm assuming is Laura cleanup, because there was a lot of tree piles that I saw on some of the roads here. And so, you know, this area was affected. Remember that the hurricane made landfall over by Lake Charles, where they were devastated by the hurricane. Now we want to go off to my east and check in with Mike Seidel, who is in Scott, Louisiana, near the Lafayette area. And, you know, Mike, I know that you had a little bit of flooding earlier. Do you think that was just from rainfall rates, or was there maybe even a drain clog, which sometimes causes so much flooding?
That's a good question. I think it's rainfall rates, because I'm looking over here behind these trees, and we've got about 5 to 6 inches of water in the field here. I walked off towards I-90. There's a lot of standing water. So we've had over 2 inches of rain, and the winds have been gusting about 35, maybe 40 miles an hour. What we're waiting for is that band. It's really part of what's left of the eye wall, or the eye wall, and that's going to sweep up this way through Abbeville and up here across Lafayette County. It'll hit here, and it'll hit Jim over in Breaux Bridge, and that'll bring us the strongest winds of the hurricane. With that said, last time with Laura, they peaked out at 60 miles an hour. They had minimal damage and a few power outages, nothing widespread, nothing more than, based on what we talked to with the locals, that lasted more than 24 hours. And we're hoping that it's no worse this time. This storm is weaker, although the center is going to be coming closer. So we're going to keep an eye on that band coming up from the south and west, coming right up from the coastline through those southern parishes over towards Vermilion Bay, right up towards Lafayette, where we are here in Scott. Let's go over to Jim Cantore. He is about 15 miles off to our east on the other side of Lafayette. And Jim, I know you're watching the same thing on the radar.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, Mike, let's call that radar up. Let's just do this right now so everybody can see what we're talking about. We're looking at this eye wall here. The folks at UF with WeatherFlow have a anemometer down there. They measured 71 miles an hour at Lake Arthur. Okay, so we have 71-mile-an-hour wind gust in that band, you can see. And it almost looks like the eastern side of that, Sarah, if you want to zoom in even a little bit, you can see where that eastern wall is. It's starting to kind of regenerate a little bit. So that's going to go up toward New Iberia, all right, where you may even be dry right now, and not much you have it, but that's going to come up toward you in New Iberia and then eventually make its way up toward Steph, Mike, and I as we go on in time. Now, the question is, does it hold together? All right, because these things are constantly in flux, especially with about 60 knots of southwest shear that's starting to rip this thing apart. That's the million-dollar question. We'll see. All right, so impacts, as I mentioned to you earlier, already factored into a weakening storm at landfall. These are some of the impacts, real time. All right, let's do Abbeville first, because I think this is a classic case of Vermilion Bay coming up into Abbeville because of the storm surge here. And even into Abbeville, into some of the streets here, you can see the flooding that's going on and the waves on top of that. So there's a big east wind, obviously pushing the bay to the north and west, right into Abbeville, and that's where we're seeing a lot of this. By the way, guys, as I kind of talk to you through here, I'm seeing a lot of power trucks, buckets, kind of rolling around here. Our power outages now up to, Nora told me last, 80,000. So, you know, those numbers are going to continue to go up for customers, and we are going to lose power. Let's take you down to Creole. This is another spot where, again, we're probably in that eye wall that I just showed you on radar. Are we going to have similar weather like that up in Abbeville, eventually up into New Iberia, Jennings, Scott, Breaux Bridge, where I am? Maybe, if it holds together. But you can see certainly what's coming ashore there again, and again from that WeatherFlow camera at Lake Arthur, which is about 30 miles inland, we're getting gusts up to 71 miles per hour there. So that's an official anemometer and certainly an official site. So again, guys, here in Breaux Bridge, you can see behind me here, we get out of these rain bands and we really lose the wind. All right, we lose the wind. So Brad's going to kind of pan down the street here a little bit. You pass the antique signs, look at it, you know, glass that's pretty much not covered at all with windows. It would almost be impossible really to cover that building. But you can see the sandbags down by the base of the door. And of course the street lights are still on, the power lights are on, power's on just about as far as the eye can see in through here. But all we've got to report for you from the sheriff is we've had one tree limb down on a road, and they have removed that. But be careful in and around the bayous, because as the heavy rain continues to come in, we're going to see more and more of these bayous come up. And this is an area where they're very undulating. all right? So that means that you're going to get surrounded if you're heading out there. Stay home, ride this thing out. The south side of the storm, a lot drier. We'll talk about that coming up. Northeast now, but some of the worst weather isn't with the center, as you know. It's with the eye wall, which is actually moving onshore. We've had unofficial gusts of over 70 miles per hour within this, and we will continue to watch this move up through some of these higher populated areas. New Iberia, Lafayette, Breaux Bridge, which is where we are, Jennings, where Stephanie is, Scott, which is where Mike is, and of course we'll cover all this for you back in the studio with Mike Bettis and Alex Wilson as well as we continue our coverage around the clock of Hurricane Delta. As I mentioned, I'm in Breaux Bridge. We've had some heavy rain that has filled up a lot of the bayous in through here, and the surge has really been the big story now, especially down in Vermilion Bay, where we've seen total water rise there of about 6 feet. Abbeville, that camera out of that area has been very, showing in terms of what that surge is doing coming in with the southeast wind. It's just weird, and I remember this in Pensacola with Sally, to watch downtown streets where there's actually waves rippling along the surge because the wind, is so strong in through there. And yet, as I mentioned, we're strong tropical storm and minimal hurricane in terms of the gusts right now. We've had buoys showing that.